Hi, ladies and gentlemen. This is Mr. Green, and we're taking up a topic. This is geometry, and we're going to be taking up a topic of geometry that we haven't covered yet. The topic is called trigonometry. Trigonometry is a very specific version of geometry, and we will be going into it a little bit here just to give you some basics about it. Okay? And don't forget, you need to make quiz corrections and due dates. Okay? Due dates come up, you need to make certain you don't leave any zeros out there in the grade book. Okay? So moving forward here. Um, One of the things that we studied earlier this semester was the fact that if we had similar triangles, we would have ratios that'd be similar. So if I were looking at the ratio of side AB on this triangle to the side AC here, I would have a 9/12. Similarly, this triangle down here, they both have 90-degree angles. If I looked at DE divided by DF, I would have 3/4. Now, interestingly, 9/12 reduces to 3/4. And I get the same ratio here. Right? Well, that ratio between those two sides was noticed by a bunch of very old Greek people. They noticed that if they had right triangles with the same angle measurements, okay, meaning that they're similar triangles, all they had to do was take the ratio of one triangle that they knew, then another triangle would have that same ratio. And they said, that is a very interesting concept. And they started giving these ratios names. The first one that we're going to talk about is called a tangent. A tangent of an angle. So that means they knew they had a right triangle, but they had to look at one particular angle. So they said the tangent of an angle is equal to its opposite side divided by the adjacent side. Now, how am I defining that? The opposite side is the one that is opposite on the triangle. So wherever angle I'm talking about, the opposite side is the one that's the opposite on the triangle. And the adjacent side is one of them that makes up the side of the triangle. But it's not the hypotenuse. It's not the long side. Okay? So they're going to say, okay, opposite over adjacent. And if I use that, it'll be the same. Every time I'm looking at a right triangle with the same angle, I'm going to get the same ratio. And because that ratio is going to be consistent every single time, they started making tables of these things and started looking at them. They said, if we're looking at a particular angle, then the tangent is always going to be this. And they could figure out certain things. So just looking at this, if I were looking at angle B up here, angle B is this one up here, and they want me to find the tangent of angle B. Well, if I look at angle B, I go to the opposite side, it's 3. And if I look at the adjacent side, it's 4. And so my tangent of that angle is going to be 3/4, or 0.75. That is interesting. Okay? Now, wow. You mean if I looked at this one here and I said, what is the opposite side of this 30-degree angle? It's this 0.175. And the adjacent side is this 303. And I divide those by each other and I get this 5.776. You know what? This is a ratio. And it is something that is a function. Because it is a function, I can do the inverse of the function. What does that mean? Well, that means if I pull up a calculator like this and I look here, there's a tan button, but above it is an inverse of the tan. I can actually do an inverse tan of a value, 0.5776, and that gives me 30-degree angle. I could take the inverse tan of that 1.75 divided by 3.03, and it should give me a 30-degree angle. Do you see how I'm getting that? Basically 30 degrees. Now, a little bit of caution about this. Just a little bit of caution. First of all, calculators have a tendency to be set in a mode called radians rather than in degrees. See, I pushed the mode button here and see how I've got radians and degrees here. You've got to make certain if you're talking about degrees that you have it set in degrees. If you don't have it set in degrees, you're going to get some really funky little answers and you're going to go, what's that? Well, you know what? Radians will be described to you in pre-cal. You do not need to know about them right at the moment. Okay? But for right now, just take it to be a different way of measuring the angle. Okay? So, these inverse functions that are above the things can actually take ratios and turn them back into angle measurements. So if you're trying to find the angle measurements on a triangle, you can use those functions. We're talking about the tangent right at the moment. And so that's the one we're going to stick with. Okay? So, going forward here. Looking at this one, use the tangent to find an angle. Okay? So if I'm looking at this 60-degree angle right here, I could say 3.03 divided by 1.75. I'm going to go back to my calculator here just to show you that I can do this. If I'm wanting to find and verify that angle, clear everything out. I'm going to say second tangent. And I'm going to say 3.03 divided by 1.75. And when I do that and hit enter, I'm going to get 59.99 or 60 degrees. And that's the exact answer that they're going to have right here, 60 degrees. Okay? So you can use the tangent to find an angle. Okay? So I've talked about tangents just a little bit. Tangents is where we're starting with in trigonometry. Remember, the tangent of an angle is its opposite side divided by its adjacent side. So you got to find the angle in the triangle, look at what the opposite side is, and look at what the adjacent side is, and you just divide those two by each other, and you would get the ratio or the value that you'd be looking at. Okay? So, having done that, I appreciate your time, and I do appreciate the fact that you appreciate mine, and you tell me that you're in geometry and what section of geometry you're in, and it helps me find your information and respond to your questions that you might have quicker. Don't forget that I have tutoring on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, and I'm available to answer your questions at any time. Talk to you later. Bye.